from Google USA, who is a senior software engineer at Google. He actually obtained his PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford in 2016. And right now, his main research interests are in computer vision, and mostly they're related to instant level recognition, so local and global features for image and landmarks recognition. And he actually was one of the main organizer for several workshops and CVPR and ICCV related to this subject. So Andres, thank you very much for joining us, especially I know that it's very early in the morning. In California, where you are now. For everyone, please, you can ask the questions during the talk, but please indicate or raise your hand or something so Andre can see you and see your reaction, so he can stop and you can ask your question. Otherwise, please don't hesitate your questions after the talk. And once again, Andre, you have the microphone, and thank you very much to be here today.
Thank you, Margot, for the introduction. Thanks to all the organizers for the invitation. And thanks everyone for joining the talk. So today I'll talk about our team's most recent work on deep image features for instance level recognition and matching. So I think I'll start by explaining what I mean by the computer vision problem of instance level recognition. And the best way to understand this is by considering the possible labels one may assign to images like these. In a basic recognition problem, we would normally have coarse labels such as painting, building, or hat. These are the types of labels that you would find for datasets like ImageNet or Open Images, for example. In a fine-grained recognition setup, the labels are more specific. For example, describing the painting style, the type of building, or the type of hat. Fine-grained recognition is an area explored in the FGVC workshop series. And in this work, we're interested in instance level labels, which are very detailed. So for the painting and the building images here, the label would correspond to their specific instance. Starry Night over the Rhône by Van Gogh and Arc de Triomphe in Paris. And for the hat, the label would correspond to the specific product shown here in the image, which is a Google cap. This type of technology is key for many important computer vision applications. For example, augmenting cultural exhibits in a museum, organizing photo collections, travel assistance, visual commerce, and so on, much more. So to start our discussion today, I thought I would highlight some important characteristics of instance level recognition problems so that you get a sense of the challenges we're dealing with. And the first characteristic that stands out is the large number of classes, since the classes are so specific. I'm illustrating this here with the Google and Marks dataset V2, which we presented at CVPR this year. This is the largest available dataset for instance level recognition, containing images of human-made and natural landmarks, like famous buildings, monuments, mountains, waterfalls, etc. And note that there is a very large number of classes, 200,000. And you can see their geographic distribution in this plot. The second characteristic I wanted to highlight is that the problem may present a long tail number of images per class. And you can see that on the right, again, for the Google and Marks dataset V2. There are some very popular landmarks with many images, while about half of all landmarks have fewer than 10 images. Only 20% of classes have more than 25 images. And this is illustrated here with some images on the left, showing popular landmarks that have more than 1,000 images in the dataset, while next to them we have less known landmarks with fewer than 5 images. So overall, this can be very imbalanced problems. Finally, this is a problem with limited appearance variability, since the classes are very specific. And in many cases, the objects we're trying to recognize are rigid, which means that appearance variation is mostly based on capture conditions, such as illumination, viewpoint, noise, clutter, occlusion. There will be no articulated motion, for example, in many cases. So here's, again, one example from the Google and Marks dataset V2, where the building of interest is shown from different viewpoints and illumination conditions. So in the area of instance level recognition, there are 3 main tests which are popular in the computer vision community today. identification, or sometimes also referred with the same name of recognition, meaning the specific task of recognizing. Then we have retrieval and matching. For identification, the task corresponds to the case where, given a test image, like shown on the left, the goal is to identify what the image is showing, basically returning a label or to denote the class. For the retrieval case, given a query image shown here on the left, the goal is to search a large database of images and find those that are similar to the query image. And for image matching, the goal is to find correspondences between images, and not only pairwise matching as shown here, but also with the multi-view case in order to find correspondences between multiple images. Image matching is the basis for many vision tasks such as 3D reconstruction and posing. Note that the characteristics I mentioned in the previous slides are applicable to all these tasks. For example, the large number of classes means that matching methods would need to generalize across many objects, which may be difficult to learn due to the long tail nature of instance-level datasets. Now let's look at different types of techniques which are commonly used to address these tasks. In the identification case for instance-level recognition, due to the nature of instance-level problem, usually it is approached with k-nearest neighbor classifiers based on global image features, and in many cases also using local feature matching. This is very different from other popular identification tasks with basic or fine-grained labels, where usually parametric methods are employed. For retrieval, global image features are commonly used for similarity search, and local feature matching is also commonly leveraged to improve the precision of the system. And for matching, the most common approach is to use local image features. As we can see, at the core of all these tasks are image representations such as global and local image features. So my talk today will mainly focus on different image representations which were developed by our team in the past few years. I'll start by discussing DELF, a deep learning method for local image feature extraction with application to these 3 tasks, which we published at ICCV 17. Then I'll present the detect retrieve technique, which combines deep local features with object detectors to boost image retrieval, and that was introduced at CPR 19. And finally, I'll discuss our most recent technique called DELG, a unified method for deep local and global features, which achieves state-of-the-art performance on identification and retrieval tests. And this was very recently published at ECCV 20. So these 3 topics will be our main agenda for today, and I'll start with DELF. Before starting, let me mention that, if you have a question, please, you can feel free to enter the question there, and I'll ask the organizers to help relay the question to me. It would be hard to monitor all the chat. Thank you. Okay, so as I was saying, let's start with DELF. DELF is a local image feature. So let me briefly recap how local image features work for those who may not be familiar with it. And local image features have 2 main components. There's a feature detector shown here on the left, which is used to detect regions in images. And here the detector regions are denoted in green. And there is a feature descriptor on the right, which is used to describe regions in images. And these descriptors, you can think of them as localized embeddings or something like that. And then they can be used to match regions across different images. Traditionally, these 2 stages are performed using handcrafted techniques. But in our work, we argue that handcrafted local features are suboptimal. And why do we argue that? Why do we think that they are suboptimal? The short answer, in our perspective, is that handcrafted local features lack semantics. So in this slide, we're showing the behavior of the feature detector. Consider the case where we're interested in matching images of buildings or monuments. Handcrafted feature detectors like SIFT will fire on completely irrelevant regions in the image. And this is because they're designed to fire for low-level patterns like blobs, for example. But in contrast, with our DELF approach, we are able to only fire in regions of the image which are relevant for the matching task that we're interested in. The other suboptimal part is the feature descriptor. It's very hard to design a handcrafted descriptor that is robust to strong illumination and viewpoint changes. And I'm showing one example here where the two images show the same building. The left one is taken at nighttime and the right one is taken at daytime. And specifically, I'm highlighting here the same 3 points of the building. And on the left image, this is a bright region with dark background. And on the right image, this is a dark region with bright background. And handcrafted methods will simply fail here since they are generally focused on low-level image patterns. In contrast, since DELF works based on semantics, and you would really need to use some semantics to do this matching here, it can work quite well in this case. DELF was introduced in our ICCV 17 paper, as I mentioned before, so let me briefly explain how it works, and I'll start by describing the method at inference time. We use the evolutional neural network and feed an image through it to obtain a feature map from one of the final layers. At inference time, we also use an image pyramid to feed images at different sizes and obtain feature maps at different scales. Then, on top of that comes the main logic from the DELF paper, which is an attention module, shown here in yellow, whose goal is to assign large values to image regions we want to detect. The output of the attention module is basically a feature map with one channel, which is the detection score. With these scores, we can then select some features from the feature map in pink, shown, which was the input to the attention module, and we can select them as candidates for local descriptors, and then we can also apply PCA normalization steps to obtain compact dimensionality at the end. As you can see from the overall method, what we do is we first describe all image regions, and then we detect or select the images, the regions of interest. This is very different from previous local features, which first ran key point detection and description only later. DELF was the first local feature to adopt this describe then detect paradigm, and fast forward to today, most deep local features follow a strategy similar to this one. Now let me discuss how we train DELF. And the first natural idea that comes in this case is to collect supervision at the level of local features such that we can know which ones to select and match. But in our case, we take a very different approach actually, and we focus on data sets with only image level supervision, which makes data collection a lot simpler and our technique much more applicable. To train the network, we design a proxy classification loss, which implicitly learns discriminative features. So let me just illustrate this visually. We again start by feeding an image through the network to obtain the output feature map and attention scores. Then at training time only, we perform weighted average pooling of a feature map using the attention scores as the weights. This produces a high dimensional vector, which can be used as the input of a classifier that predicts image level labels. And what will tend to happen in this process is that the attention layer learns to predict high scores for discriminative features, which are the ones we're interested in matching. Let me emphasize again that the pooling and classifier operations shown in this slide are really only done at training time, so they're not necessary when we want to apply the technique. Overall, this actually maybe doesn't sound too complicated, but what I explained here in the interest of conciseness is just one of the 3 steps that we had for training DELF. And when we talk later about DELF, I will show actually a training technique which becomes a lot simpler than the one we presented in the DELF paper. So in the DELF paper, we demonstrated a large-scale instance-level recognition system entirely based on local features. And it works as follows. First, we extract DELF features from all database images, and then we index them efficiently using a combination of KD trees and product quantization. At query time, we extract the query's DELF local features, and then we retrieve the features most similar to the query ones, leveraging the efficient indexing to perform approximate nearest neighbor search. And finally, these retrieved index local features will undergo geometric verification to compare against the query features. And only the results that pass such strict geometric matching are returned. So this is a system that naturally has high precision. Using the system, we compared several methods for the task of landmark recognition. And the precision recall curve is shown here on the right. Our final method is shown in red, is the one most closest to the top right part of the curve. So first, let's consider comparison to state-of-the-art techniques at the time. Compared to a handcrafted local feature called Congas, which is very similar to SIFT, it's basically the Google version of SIFT. The curve is shown here in black. And we achieve more than 3 times improved recall and 90% precision. Compared to a state-of-the-art global feature at the time, from the DIR paper shown in cyan, we are 10x better on the same metric. And let's discuss next some ablations. So we perform some ablations to understand where the contributions come from in the DELF technique. So one of the first curves that you can see on the left of this precision recall diagram is the DELF idea, but with a network that is not fine-tuned and does not use attention selection. So that will be the purple curve. And the performance is not very good, as you can see. But if we fine-tune the features, we improve it to the green curve. Now it's similar to the black curve, which is Congas. It's still not very good performance, but it already improved. And the next ablation is the blue curve, which is if we don't fine-tune the features, but just use the idea of attention selection. So you can see comparing the blue curve to the purple curve, the only thing that we changed was how to select the features, was to add the attention mechanism. And that provides a huge boost. It's actually even more important than just fine-tune the features, which was the green curve. So finally, once we add all components, we've both fine-tuned the features for the domain of interest and use the attention selection. We had the red curve, which is the best method here. Here's some visualizations of DELF local features. These images show local feature matches between 2 images. And you can see, for example, in the top right image, how we can find matches even under extreme illumination and scale changes, which are usually very difficult for handcrafted features to handle. And on the bottom right, I'm also showing a failure case where we find consistent matches across a floor tiling, which just happens to be kind of very similar between 2 different landmarks. And this is a failure mode that will generally happen for almost any local feature. So the results I presented in previous slides were the ones we introduced in the DELF paper, which shown mainly instance level identification results. In this slide, let me also briefly mention results on retrieval and matching tasks. For retrieval, when we combine DELF with a popular feature aggregation technique called R-ASMK, DELF achieves very high performance. As a matter of fact, it was the highest performing method in the CPR 18 paper that introduced the revisited Oxford and Paris datasets, which are recent benchmarks for landmark retrieval. And for matching on the right, with DELF local features, they were able to achieve 2nd rank in last year's VPR Visual Localization Challenge. And you can see some matching results here. Overall, DELF is a technique that has been validated with a lot of experience in many areas. So it seems like it really works for several tasks. Finally, before concluding the section on DELF, let me mention one of the related problems we had to figure out in order to extract local features from convolutional neural networks. And we were trying to do something as shown here on the left, where we have an input image that goes through a complex convolutional neural network, and then we obtain an output feature map at the end. But it's not straightforward to relate one of the extracted features, let's say the one shown here in green, to a region in the input image that extracted it. It will depend a lot on the parameters of the convolutional neural network. So at the time we were developing DELF, there were no descriptions on how this could be done. So what we did was we wrote out the math and published a paper in the machine learning journal Distill. The paper includes nice interactive visualizations like the one shown here on the right, and also an open source code base with pre-computed receptive field parameters of many models, as shown here on the bottom left. So if you're interested in understanding a bit more about these intricacies of neural networks, I definitely encourage you to take a look. To quickly conclude this part about DELF, the key ideas were the use of attention as feature detector, the new describe then detect paradigm for local feature extraction. Local feature learning with weak supervision, only image level labels are used, and geometric local feature matching with deep features, which at the time was still not really known if it could work well. Now let's switch gears to discuss the detect retrieve technique, which is mostly focused on image retrieval systems. Margot, did you want to say something? I saw you.
Yes, I was going to actually ask one question before we move to the next one. So there was a question actually about the attention block in DELF. Can you go into a bit more details and explain how exactly the attention works here? It's not like a normal attention with queries, case, or how does this block work? Because this is the main.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good question. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's definitely not like the attention that you were mentioning, like the self-attention, cross-attention from ideas of transformers and things like that. So in here, actually, it's very simple. So the attention will be just a two-layer convolutional neural network without stride. Both kernels are one by one, and basically the goal is to take basically all possible local descriptors that are extracted from the image and assign to them a score. And the highest the score will be, the more relevant this feature would be for matching images in the domain you're interested. So we demonstrated this in the paper with landmarks. So it's very interesting because when you look at so basically the DELF attention map will be the key point detection map. And when you look at those, you'll see that they will be high, they will show high scores for areas of the images showing landmarks. And whenever there's a phase, the scores will be very low, for example, and things like that. Does that answer the question, or I'm happy to clarify more if needed?
I think for me it does. Let's see if there would be a continuation of this question from the chat. But there is just one more question, which actually is, so what is the use of a KD3 in the pipeline?
Right. So for the original DELF paper, we used the KD3 to efficiently index DELF local descriptors, basically. So for each image in the database, we would extract all the DELF local descriptors and store them efficiently using the KD3, such that when we have a new image that we want to match against all the images in the database, we would be able to search efficiently for those local descriptors. So it's basically used for allowing efficient approximate nearest neighbor search.
Thank you. And there is a follow-up for the previous question. So basically, it could be any convolutional block with any kernel size, and it will work as an attention block.
Yes, that's true. So he actually attempted different kernel sizes. It doesn't necessarily have to be one by one. You're right. I think the only main constraint that we have here is that there should be as many attention scores as there are local descriptors, such that you can assign one score to each of them. So you should not include a stride there, for example, because that would change the resolution. But other than that, we experimented with different kernel sizes, but it didn't really show that it would make much difference. The one by one was enough in our experiments.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Maybe just a very naive question. Is it possible to do some kind of a cross attention between the images if they belong to the same class and it's the same landmark?
Yeah, I think that would be a very interesting idea. I think so you mean a cross attention between the two features of the two images or something like that?
Yes, something like this.
Yeah, so that actually gets similar to dense feature extraction. So here in DELF, we are mostly following the sparse feature detection paradigm, where we detect only a small number of features compared to, for example, the number of pixels in the image. But there is a lot of work recently on actually dense feature extraction, where you almost have one feature per pixel, and then you could kind of do a correlation between these feature maps. And people have actually been exploring this direction recently quite a lot. So I think there is promise in that idea as well.
Okay, Uh, well, there's one more question, and then let's well, that so you mentioned that using the attention block was only during the training and not during the inference time. So can you extrapolate a little bit on this?
Oh, no, sorry. The attention block is used both at training and inference time. The thing that is not used at inference time is the aggregation. So in order to train the attention module, we do the aggregation, but that is not done during inference time.
Yeah, I see.
So the attention is definitely used. Yeah.
Yeah, so yes, you just add this block to train. Okay, then I think that is it for the questions. So let's continue. Thank you very much for the answers, and thanks everybody for the questions.
Yeah, great, great. Keep the questions coming. Okay, let me move to the second part then. We'll talk about now the detect retrieve technique, which is mainly focused for image retrieval systems, and this was a paper last year in SWPR. So in this detect retrieve paper, our main focus was on a common failure mode for image retrieval systems, which is the case where database images have small objects. So for example, say that you query an image retrieval system with an Eiffel Tower image, and in the database say that you have these two images. And since they depict the Eiffel Tower, you would expect to retrieve them. However, this is of course very challenging because the Eiffel Tower shown here it's not the main subject in these images, and they're quite small. And this is actually a common problem for many other objects as well, of course, in image retrieval. So one intuitive way to approach this problem that has been attempted in the past is to perform regional search, which means that each image region would be stored as a separate item in the database. This is not a novel idea as well. This is not a novel idea at all. There's been quite some efforts along this direction in the computer vision literature. So for example, Arangelovich and Zisserman proposed to use a uniform grid to select regions in 2013. So this would be basically, you can think of this as a rough detection in the image, and then you index each of these images separately. Then in 2014, 2015, different papers proposed to use class-agnostic object detectors for selecting regions. But in a recent image retrieval benchmark paper, the authors concluded that regional search does not yet deliver improvements that are significant enough to justify the additional memory and complexity costs. So in other words, what the authors concluded here is that maybe you could gain a bit of performance by using regional search. However, this was not very efficient as of 2018, at least when this benchmark paper was published. So it was probably not worth it at the time. So when we looked at this scenario, we tried to think of a way to improve things. And our first hypothesis was that maybe the previous approaches had an issue with the way that they selected image regions. So our first hypothesis was, can you improve regional search if we use a trained object detector specific to the domain we're interested in? So that led us initially to collect bounding boxes for famous landmarks, which are the most common objects for most image retrieval benchmark datasets. So we did this by showing images from the Google Landmarks dataset V1 to human annotators, and their task was to draw bounding boxes corresponding to the object of interest in the image. In total, we collected 86,000 boxes, and you can see a sample of them in the slide. They capture both human-made and natural structures, for example, buildings, statues, waterfalls, mountains, etc. And this was the first contribution in this paper, and all the boxes were released publicly. After collecting these boxes, we can validate them by training off-the-shelf object detector models. And the good news here is that this works quite well, both for lightweight and heavier models. On the left, I'm showing object detection mean average precision on our collected dataset as a function of the training for these object detection architectures. In this case, we attempted MobileNet V2 SSD and ResNet 50 faster CNN, and both worked similarly well. On the right, we show some qualitative examples. There are 3 pairs of images here, and for each pair, we show the detection on the left and the ground truth box on the right, and you can see that they tend to agree quite well. So with this new object detection model, we can naturally incorporate better boxes to perform regional search. So in this work, we used DELF local features in combination with ASMK aggregation. A-ASMK is a local feature aggregation technique that was introduced by Tolias et al. Back in 2013. And at the time, the combination of DELF with A-ASMK aggregation was the best performing method around for global feature representations. So let me illustrate the process visually, how we would now use the strain object detection to perform regional search. So first we would start by extracting DELF local image features and detecting landmark bounding boxes in input images. Here on this image, the blue stars would correspond to DELF local features, and the yellow rectangles would correspond to predictions by the object detector. Then for each bounding box, we would perform DELF feature aggregation using A-ASMK. So for each database image, we would store several A-ASMK descriptors corresponding to the number of bounding boxes. So this increases substantially the database size. And with the system, at inference time, what we would do is we would score basically all the boxes, which are now stored as individual signatures, let's say. And for each image, we would assign it the score to the most similar box that is within it. The most similar box to the query in terms of the A-ASMK representation. So this tends to work well, which maybe was not unexpected because we collected this data, we now trained this object detector. So on the right, the plot here shows mean average precision on the y-axis as a function of the number of detected regions per image. So the leftmost point in this plot would be the single image baseline where no boxes are detected. And we show different methods here. First, our method is shown in green. We're able to achieve more than 2% improvement over the baseline that does not use any bounding boxes. And that is done with less than 5 boxes per image. And this is actually much better than previous work. So we compare to other ways of selecting boxes, shown here in red and blue. In red is the box detection with uniform grids, which has been used in previous work. And in blue, box detection with generic object detector, also used in previous work. And using our trained object detector, we achieve the best results in this case. It achieves better performance than others and at much lower costs in terms of number of boxes. While it was nice to obtain a nice performance boost with the regional search approach with new boxes which improved, we were still bothered by the fact that the number of items stored in the database was so much larger, with about 4 times more database indexing cost. So in order to tackle this, we proposed a regional aggregation method, which we called regionally aggregated selective match kernels, or R-ASMK for short. And the way we derived this was by directly trying to combine similarities of different regional representations with respect to the query image. And when you do that, it becomes quite important to renormalize the representation due to average pooling and also apply selectivity function for A-ASMK. I will try to avoid going into detail here into the math in the interest of time, but basically the overall intuition is that we're combining regional representations, which may contain very different visual information, and we need a method to avoid them being watered down, so to speak, and making them fully count in the final representation. So I mentioned a lot of things, so let me show visually how this works. We again will start by extracting DELF local features and landmark bounding boxes. Then first we would extract VLAD representations for each region. And finally, we would combine all of them into a single aggregated global descriptor for the entire image. So now what we're doing is we're effectively using the bounding boxes to drive and improve representation. And this leads to a database size which is in the order of the number of images instead of the number of boxes as we were considering before for regional search. Experimentally, the very interesting result is that actually our regional aggregation approach outperforms the regional search one. Here on the right, we're showing the same plot as before, mean average precision as a function of the number of regions per image. And now the techniques which use regional aggregation are shown as dashed lines, while regional search is shown as solid lines. So for the green curves, which use our trained detector, we achieve better performance using regional aggregation. But note that the same does not actually hold for other region selection techniques which use uniform grids or a generic detector. Overall, this is great news because it means that we no longer need to store each box representation independently, so the database can be much more compact. You may also be wondering that this result could be a little counterintuitive because actually, we have fewer memory costs, but how is it that we're getting better performance? But actually, when you look at the results, you can start to understand what's going on, and things do indeed make sense. Basically, when regional search increases, while regional search increases the chance of finding a true positive match in the query to the query, it actually also increases the chance of finding a false positive match. So let me illustrate this with a qualitative result here. In this slide, we're showing the query object on the left, which is just the image region with the red bounding box on the left image. And on the right, we show 3 different retrieved images, which were ranked high by different methods. The first one shown here is ASMK. It's just the baseline DELF ASMK, which retrieves a correct image. The second one is the regional search, which in this case shows an incorrect result, where you can see basically the effect I was mentioning, where it detects a box, which is shown here in red. In this box has a similar building style, which is to the query object as shown in the left. However, these 2 buildings are actually not the same object, so this is an incorrect retrieval result. If the representation had included more information about context, for example, maybe this could have helped. And on the far right of the slide, you can see the correct result obtained with regional aggregation, where we use several boxes, and combining the visual information from these boxes helps guide the representation to focus on relevant information. Quantitatively, this approach delivered 9.3% mean error precision improvement over the best method at the time, which was the baseline DELF ASMK. And it also achieved the best performance in all splits and protocols of the revisited Oxford and Paris datasets. So to conclude this part, we presented the detect retrieve method, and the main contributions were a new dataset of landmark bounding boxes, improved regional search systems with the trained object detector, and the new matching kernel called regionally aggregated selective match kernels, which allows for efficient local feature aggregation guided by a trained object detector. So I'll move on now to the third part of the talk. I wonder if there are any questions at this point.
No, I don't see any questions yet, but I just have one small one. I just wonder, how were you actually annotating the bounding boxes? Because it doesn't look very trivial. If you will annotate the bounding box, a whole landmark or part of it or one tower.
Yeah, good question. So in the dataset that we were using to annotate, the assumption was that only one landmark is shown per image. So we explicitly enforced this. So if there were 2, actually we didn't even include the image in the dataset. So we enforced this and asked the human annotators to draw the bounding box for that one. Yeah.
Okay, I see. When you show some other, like some parts of the, sometimes the detector is detecting like one tower and then the whole thing. And then there is one more question. So does your method help with larger images since it has more context with multiple boxes?
Larger images, if you mean by larger resolution?
I think that's an input size of the image in larger resolution, yes.
Yeah, I think it could help. Basically, these different boxes will allow us to basically leverage more DELF features from these regions in the images. So it's not necessarily about the resolution, but at the same time, we do tend to see that larger resolution tends to help, performance in these standard benchmarks. But it's about the fact that we, at the end, will end up selecting more DELF features guided by the regions where we detected a landmark.
Yeah, thank you for the answer. I don't see any more questions yet. So I think we can just move on and then later.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
So yeah, let's move on to the third main technical contribution I wanted to present today, which is called DELG, being applicable to mainly identification and retrieval problems. And as I mentioned earlier in this talk, there are two main types of image representations used for instance level recognition tasks. Here on the left, like SIFT or DELF, they detect specific regions in the input image and extract descriptors for those regions. And global features, on the other hand, they would extract embeddings that summarize the contents of the entire image. Local features can be used to geometrically match images showing the same object, and since these results are strict matches, they often lead to high precision. While global features, on the other hand, they are able to find reasonable matches even when it's infeasible to perform local feature matching, for example, due to extreme viewpoint changes. For this reason, global features tend to provide much higher recall. These two feature modalities are clearly complementary. And to leverage these characteristics, previous work has used global features for the initial retrieval step and then re-ranking via local feature matching to enable both high precision and high recall. However, today, this requires two separate models with redundant computations, which is overall inefficient. Previous work has addressed this challenge with models that either only train the global feature and obtain local features from the same network, or by distilling two different local and global feature models into a single model. But in the work that I'm presenting here now, we instead propose a unified model that can be trained end-to-end. But it's interesting to think of how we could design such a model. We can start by thinking about the desired characteristics for these two feature modalities. For example, for these two images depicting the same scene, we'd like to train a global feature that is invariant to the changes in viewpoint and illumination. In other words, the global features of these two images should be very similar. On the other hand, local features should behave quite differently. In particular, for the local feature detector, it must be equivariant, such that the same key points are detected independently of their locations in the image. It could be difficult to design a system with these specific characteristics. However, our insight is that these properties are already available within hierarchical representations from convolutional neural networks. So let's take a closer look at it. In this slide, we visualize image patches that maximally activate a specific layer in a ResNet model. And these image patches are the receptive field regions for a feature that is located at their centers. So I'm presenting this here for shallow, but also now for deep layers in the network. Note that the receptive field size will increase with network depth, so you end up seeing more of the image in these visualizations as the layers go deeper. Shallow layers like conv2 on the left, they will tend to detect low-level patterns like blobs and specific edges and corners. Intermediate layers like conv3 or conv4 in the center of the slide, they will start to detect more complex shapes, like for example, arches and with growing complexity. And deep layers like conv5 on the right will capture entire objects. Deep layers like conv5, they will tend to have high invariance. So for example, even if an object undergoes large changes in the viewpoint, as shown here in red, it will tend to produce similar activations for the same feature. And on the other hand, shallower layers are more equivariant. As I'm showing here for conv3 in blue, they represent smaller and more localizable patterns, being invariant only to limited changes in viewpoint, which is in part due to their smaller receptive field. Using this intuition, we propose DELG, a unified model for deep local and global features, where the left head of the model extracts a global feature from a deep layer, and the right head extracts local features from an intermediate layer, leveraging an autoencoder which was used for the first time for local descriptor training. The entire network can be learned end-to-end with only image-level labels. Let me explain how training works. Here's the same model, but now laid out horizontally. And we used, horizontally, the same model from the previous slide. So let me just emphasize the global features on the top here. And the local feature head is on the bottom. So you can see in yellow the attention module, which is very similar to the DELF one. And on the bottom, the local descriptor will be this feature map in red. So during training only, so everything that is in this green box here is only for training. We add some modules to make it able to train the network. We use 3 loss functions and a few additional layers. So first we train the global feature to distinguish landmarks. So this is an instance level identification task. We use a suitable metric learning loss arc phase. Second, to obtain compact local descriptors, we train an autoencoder with the reconstruction loss because these feature maps from the convolutional neural network backbones, they are usually very high dimensional. So we use training this autoencoder, we obtain a much smaller compact local descriptor. And third, we train the attention layers for key point detection. This is very similar to what I explained before for the DELF work. We learn a classifier with features that are pulled with attention weights, which tends to make the attention network fire for discriminative image regions. So these three loss functions are combined into the final loss, allowing end-to-end training in a single shot. However, there is a catch here. Simply training these components together actually leads to a suboptimal model. We find that it's very important at the end to stop gradient backpropagation from the local feature head, from the attention in autoencoder layers into the backbone. So let me discuss this finding about this gradient backpropagation, why it's needed, and let me discuss that in more detail with a local feature ablation experiment. Here we perform local feature matching for image pairs that depict the same or different landmarks, and I'm already showing some results here. We're comparing different techniques for reducing dimensionality of the local descriptors. We use two baselines shown here in blue, PCA on the left, and a simple fully connected layer on the right. And when we train an autoencoder separately from the network backbone, the autoencoder will be trained similarly to what I presented in the previous slide, but separately from the network backbone, so not end-to-end training, we would obtain improved local feature matching. However, when we do train everything together end-to-end in a naive manner, performance of the autoencoder degraded, of local feature matching using the autoencoder degrades substantially. And when we go back to stop the gradient backpropagation, as mentioned in the previous slide, the autoencoder performance is recovered. So we analyze this phenomenon more closely to try to understand why the naive training does not work. And our hypothesis is that a better hierarchical representation is formed when we stop the gradient backpropagation. So in this plot here on the right, we're presenting the evolution of activation sparsity as training progresses for different layers in the network. So for the naive training method, shown with dashed lines, they tend to lead to very sparse activations, both for deep and intermediate layers. So the deep layers here will be in red and the intermediate layers in blue. And as you can see in the dashed lines, they will lead over the course of training to very sparse activations. Our proposed training with solid lines will lead to much less sparsity. You can see that, as I said, in the solid lines, which suggests that a stronger hierarchical representation is obtained. In the interest of time, I'll not go too much more into the detail of this, but this is a rough intuition, and happy to discuss this more at Q&A time. Now let's switch gears to discuss experimental results, and specifically retrieval. How would we perform retrieval using these two feature modalities? So at inference time, we first would use the feature, the global feature that we extract from the model for large-scale similarity search. Global features are generally compact and can be used efficiently to do a large-scale similarity search. And then we would use the local features to re-rank the top images and applying geometric checks to improve the precision of the system. Our global and local features set a new state-of-the-art for image retrieval. Here we show results in the revisited Oxford dataset. On the left, we compare our global feature against recent work and show that we can outperform them significantly. And on the right, we compare only the local features for re-ranking purposes and compare again against several recent local features. And DELG outperforms them by a large margin. We also achieve state-of-the-art single model results for instance level recognition. And here we compare different techniques on the Google Landmarks dataset v2, and we even outperform many complex ensembles from a recent public challenge, which are shown in red. We also compare DELG to previous work in terms of feature extraction latency on the left plot here and memory footprint on the right for a large-scale dataset. And DELG outperforms the previous retrieval state-of-the-art in terms of mean average precision, while at the same time being 5 times more efficient and 18% more memory efficient. Note that the previous state-of-the-art shown here was a DELF R-ASMK, which is the one I presented in the detect retrieve part of this talk. Let me illustrate some examples of retrieval results that showcase the performance obtained by DELG. On the left here, we show two queries and one correctly retrieved image for each query. The retrieved images are very different from the queries. However, the global feature is able to find substantial similarity in these cases, ranking them relatively high, which shows that the global feature search provides high recall. These are cases where local features are not able to obtain matches due to strong illumination or viewpoint changes. And on the right, let me illustrate the benefit of local feature re-ranking, how it can boost precision of the retrieval results. For the query on the left, we're showing two rows on the right, and the top row shows results that only use global feature search, where we can clearly see an incorrect image that is ranked very high, second rank here. It has similar color. And the bottom row shows the results after local feature matching re-ranking, which effectively discards the incorrect image found on the first stage, improving the overall precision of the system. In this slide, we also show some examples of local feature matching with the DELG local feature, and we can obtain robust matches under substantial viewpoint and illumination changes. To conclude this part, we presented DELG, a unified model for deep local and global features. It uses an integrated autoencoder for dimensionality reduction and can be trained end-to-end using only image-level labels. And we achieve state-of-the-art results for instance-level retrieval and recognition tasks. So before concluding the talk and opening for more questions, let me take a minute to mention some upcoming developments in instance-level recognition research. And as you can tell from the experiments I showcased during this talk, a lot of work has been done for instance-level recognition in the domain of landmarks. And now we're pushing forward research in this area by creating benchmarks for other domains as well. So this is coming about in the context of our workshop series, which started by focusing only on landmarks in CVPR 18 and CVPR 19. But more recently, with the instance level recognition workshop at ECCV 20, where we announced collaborations with academic and industrial organizations to launch benchmarks for other domains as well. So this upcoming benchmark suite will feature real-world datasets for landmarks, products, and artworks with Google, Amazon, and the Metropolitan Museum in New York City. So we're really eager to bring together these exciting applications and start pushing for more unified research in the area of instance-level recognition. And finally, to summarize what I presented today, here's a quick overview. I talked about three main techniques from 4 papers on DELF, receptive field computation, detect, retrieve, and DELF, covering deep learning-based image representations for instance-level recognition. I also briefly introduced and mentioned the Google Landmarks dataset in our related workshop series. So putting all of this together, I hope it makes for a good picture of recent advancements in the field of instance-level recognition. I'd like to acknowledge the contribution and hard work of many of my collaborators from Google Research and other organizations. It really took the effort of many people to put together all of these projects. And with that, thank you for your attention today. I'll be happy to take questions. I noted on this slide some links for those who may be interested in checking out our recent code, models, datasets, and workshop. So thank you. Again, happy to take questions.
Thank you very much for the interesting talk. And there are actually already lots of questions. So
Great.
we don't have too much time, but if you can stay a little bit longer, we can at least start answering to them.
Yeah, that works.
So actually, I propose to make it a bit more interactive. So if I can ask the questions, of course, but if the persons who ask the questions want to ask them themselves, please raise your hands, like raise the clap, and then I will just leave you to ask the question to make it more interactive and maybe more of a live discussion. And okay, so far it's not the case. I will start with the first question. So the first would be, would you recommend when considering a context-based image retrievals as a tool for geolocalization, so like 3D pose estimation, what would you recommend to consider? DELF and geometric verification, maybe DELF before geometric verification with handcrafted detector, something else?
Yeah, so great question. This is an area, visual localization, finding the 3D pose of the relocalization, right, by the pose of the camera with respect to the scene. This is a very active research topic, and there are many different techniques being explored there. I think most recently, the most common paradigm that people have been using is to actually combine global and local image features for in the first stage, do a rough search using the global feature. And in the second stage, you will use the local feature to do the matching and posing with the top retreat images from the first stage, from the global feature similarity. So this tends to be, I think, the method that is most widely used. If I remember correctly, they were the winners of the visual localization challenge that were hosted in CPR. So there's a workshop on long-term visual localization there. So as I mentioned before, DELF was used in this problem. I know last year we achieved the second best performance in that challenge when looking only at the local feature track, but DELF is currently not the state of the art. So there are other techniques there that now offer improved local feature accuracy, detection accuracy. And so I think I would recommend things along that way. That seems to be the direction that the community is exploring the most. So combination of global and local features.
Thank you for your answer. Then there is next question. So, well, first of all, thank you for the presentation. Let me get back to the question. Okay, so have you tried using the attention model of local features to select activations and pulling to the global descriptor?
Yes, great question. This is a question that we often get as well. So what happens here is that the attention, if you're only using the attention for global feature purposes, generally, since we're only training with image level labels, the attention would not help so much because it will be basically just a weighting of the global features to lead to some pooling, which already, if you think about it a little bit, the network is kind of already doing to some extent, in the sense that, you know, we have so many of these layers and recombinations of these feature maps anyway. But actually, when we first published the DELF paper, we got asked that question from reviewers, and we had to run the experiment of using the old features with the attention weights, and actually was doing a good job. It was not like the state of the art. Generally, for the state of the art in image retrieval, it's better to just use a deeper network and training for longer and with a better metric learning tend to be more important for global features, let's say, than using the attention method to deploy. The attention method here, really, the main purpose in our work is really to select the discriminative local features. But yeah, just to kind of, you know, wrapping up the answer to your question, it could be used, but it can be better. It may not be the best use of the attention module. It's better for the local feature. Yeah.
Thank you. Then there is actually a very interesting question, also a bit of a general one, but what are your thoughts on methods used by the finalists in the landmark retrieval challenges? Because there was a recent Google one. So is there an approach standing out in terms of contributions? Was there some novel ideas which you can name, or which you especially
Yeah,
like?
so yeah, it's very recent. So the retrieval challenge, it concluded, I think, like a month or a half ago or so, and the recognition challenge very recent, like in last 2 weeks. We're still processing all the material from the winners and just still submitting everything. But there were some interesting techniques there about, for example, how to train better image retrieval models by doing progressive resolution change in the image that is used in the resolution that is used for images as inputs to the retrieval model. So that was one of the techniques that the winner of the landmark retrieval challenge used, for example. I was going to mention something else. I think one of the interesting aspects of these challenges is that you bring a lot of people and that would otherwise not have participated in this kinds of experiments or image retrieval or recognition, and they tend to explore a lot of the methods that are available in in the community, and things that researchers who are working on this problem maybe will not have thought. So one of the recent techniques that was proposed this year for image matching was something called superglue, which is a learnable matching technique. And people use this recently now for the landmark recognition challenge. And apparently it found better local feature matches when you apply that technique to in the retrieval case, which is something we didn't know either, because the paper was proposed more for the area of structure for motion and visual localization. And apparently it works quite well, actually, even with their already pre-trained models. As I said, having like 1,200 teams from gagglers around the world play with all these different models, you bring some of these interesting discoveries.
Yeah, I guess this one also replaces a bit the run-stack features and just improves the matching. The glue paper from this year. There's a question, so if you have some time, can we still go on?
Yeah,
okay.
No problem.
There is a kind of a long question. I will try to read it. So, multiplicative loss weights the influence or effect on the feature over the other in a multi-head attention networks. It enforces a harsher penalty for the features which are more dominant, like naively. So do you think something like this would be helpful for weighting the multiple losses that you use with the DELF? And there is actually even a link for the multiplicative loss paper. I'm not familiar with. I can read the name if you're interested.
So multiplicative loss is influence of effect of one feature over the other. I see. So if I understand correctly, it would be more like not just kind of training or analyzing the contribution of each feature independently, but also in the context with other features. Please correct me if my understanding is incorrect. But yes, okay. So it sounds like that is my understanding is correct. So yes, I think it sounds promising. So this, this first thought that comes to mind to me there is that this sounds a little related to recent trend in computer vision models like squeeze and excite networks and non-local neural networks and A2 nets, which is to produce better representations by taking contributions of features in the entire image, not only localized contributions, which is the most common practice in convolutional neural networks. So this sounds promising. One thing that we thought about this direction before is that we still want our local features to be rather localized and not, represent contents for the entire image. Otherwise, the matching may suffer some loss. But maybe what you're bringing here is interesting is that maybe for the attention network, just to know how to detect the features better and not representing them necessarily that way, but just know which features to detect, maybe that could be helpful. So yeah, that's an interesting thought. Thanks.
Thank you for the answer to the question, Ronak. So there are just several more questions. Yes, it is. So what is the instant level meaning in the landmark recognition research? So it's just one landmark in one image, right? So it's just one object each time.
Yes, correct. So this would be for landmarks. This terminology is kind of not that difficult. It's like just there's only one building, let's say, of each building is a class. You can think of it this way. So there's a physical object like that. When we talk about instance level recognition, so I thank you for the question because this is an interesting clarification here. When we talk about instance level recognition, it can be just each instance may be a class. Like for example, landmarks and paintings would fall into this category. There's only one painting specifically, Starry Night over the Horn and things like that. But when you look at products, for example, there can be multiple products. You buy a box of cereal in the supermarket, there are many of them, right? And each of them, you could think of them as being a separate instance. So we were actually debating at the beginning if we should call this instance recognition or instance level recognition. And we ended up going for instance level recognition, meaning that we're trying to recognize things at the level of instances, not necessarily only instances. So in the product case, for example, we would try to recognize, the box of cereal, but we of course acknowledge that, there can be many replicas of that object in the world.
Thank you for the answer. So there is one last question. Actually, we already talked a little bit about superglue. So did you try local features in the visual location pipeline? So exactly in the light of superglue, HLOC, and the others. So if yes, what was the finding? Was it working better or not? Maybe also in the Kaggle challenge, did this method work better or not?
Yeah, so for visual localization, we did use DELF in the past. So like I said, for example, in the last year's CPR workshop on visual localization, we used DELF. It worked quite well, but as I said, it's not the state of the art today. There are other possibilities. And with respect to superglue, we have not yet combined, DELF or DELF with superglue, but that sounds like a very promising direction as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Then maybe just one last question. And what about the reconstruction loss in the paper? Which role does it play actually? Like, how much does it help to have it?
I think you're referring to the reconstruction loss from the autoencoder head, if I remember correctly. So
yes, exactly.
the role here, yeah. So the role here is to reduce the dimensionality of these very high dimensional intermediate feature maps of convolutional neural networks. So usually, for example, for local features, the standard dimensionality to use for the descriptors is 128 because everybody wants to compare to SIFT. And basically, that's what it does. So if you look at these intermediate feature maps that we usually take, I think in our paper, they're like 1024 channels each feature. And using the reconstruction loss, we basically learn an autoencoder that learns to reduce the dimensionality of the local descriptors to 128, and in a way that hopefully it will preserve as much as information as possible. So that is the goal there.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yes, now I see. And then there is really the last question. Okay. So have you experimented with recent propositions of replacing the proxy classification loss with the ranking loss? There are some works from Araujo and Tisserman, and the ranking loss allowing direct optimization of the AP. It seems optimal, but surprisingly, it's not used yet in the literature.
Yeah, so very good question. This is, I think, a debate that has been going on in the community for a long time. What is best, like triplet style or contrastive style learning, or softmax based, cosine softmax based classification loss terms. So one thing that specifically in the DELG paper we showed was that using the same data sets and the arc phase loss for metric learning, that one we used for DELG, actually it outperforms the method from Revo et al. What's the name? The AP metric, and the Zisserman one, I think you're referring in the question, is the one. It's called Smooth AP, which was published CCV, I think, or CPR this year. But yeah, so we compared directly to the Revo et al. Method, which was something published for the exact same data sets. And just using arc phase loss, we were actually able to outperform it. So I think this debate apparently will still continue to go on. Like a lot of people want to train using triplet style or contrastive loss. But my personal opinion is that if your data set already has labels, image level labels, and it's a lot more efficient to use cosine-based softmax losses, because batch normalization functions more efficiently because you can sample different images from all classes. The training batch statistics becomes more similar to the entire data set statistics. It's simpler to implement. So there are many advantages. The convergence generally is faster. But the ranking losses still have an advantage where you still, if you don't have labels, let's say, if you only have relationships between images, if you only know that this image is X, whatever similarity you have defined for the problem, similar to that image, and Y similarity to the other image, you can still formulate that as a ranking loss very easily, while not so much if you wanted to use the classification loss. So yeah.
Thank you very much for the detailed answers and for your presentation. So yes, and thank you for the insight, the person who asked the last question. So with that, yeah, just want to thank Andrea and thank everyone who joined today for the first session of the SUMAC workshop. So actually right now we're going to have a break for about 1 hour, and I hope to see everybody here in, well, we're going to start at 13. Always set time. So thank you very much. And please, if you didn't see the videos, you can just also take a look to have more questions for the next session. They're all online on the